Welcome to Mastering Your Financial Life, hosted by Judy Heft, the founder and CEO of Judy Heft and Associates, Financial and Lifestyle Concierge. This year, she's celebrating 27 years in business. In every episode, Judy interviews professionals who help others successfully manage their financial lives. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Judy is the author of 2 books, How to Be Smart, Successful, and Organized with Your Money for a Better Today and Tomorrow, and her latest book, Mastering Your Financial Life Cycles, How to Successfully Manage Money in Every Decade of Life. You can read chapters of her books and catch prior episodes of the show at www.judithheft.com. Now, here's the host of Mastering Your Financial Life, Judy Heft.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our 49th episode of Mastering Your Financial Life. And I am Judy Heft, Financial and Lifestyle Concierge. And we are celebrating 27 years in business. And I'm excited to be here today with Keren Birnbaum. Keren is a partner at Birnbaum Lewis, and she specializes in trust and estate planning and elder law. And she also advises on Medicare planning, long-term care planning, and she advises clients on how to protect themselves and their loved ones in the event of any kind of a business change or a life change situation. And she's always there to offer a kind word and a good guiding light. So Keren, welcome. Thanks for being my guest.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, I think there's like some kind of like people are afraid to think about planning their estates, or they say, I don't have an estate. I don't have anything to plan. What do I need? Or I don't have kids yet, or I'm thinking about kids, or I'm young. So when is like the best time? What do I need to think about planning your estate? And what does it really involve? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that word.
Yeah, I think you're right. Oftentimes I'll hear, oh, I don't have any money. I don't really need to worry about estate planning, or I don't have kids, so what do I need to worry about? The truth is that everybody has something they care about, whether it's a loved one, right? Maybe I don't have kids, but maybe I have a charity that I support, or maybe I have nieces, nephews, relatives that I do care about. And maybe I don't have significant assets, but maybe I have a pension, or maybe I don't have any of those things. I still have a life. So estate planning is not only for when you're no longer here, it's for while you're alive as well. So your healthcare proxy, your power of attorney, these are things you actually really need. And so one of my favorite things is when a person who comes to me, they say, I'm not married, I don't have children. Why do I need an estate plan? I don't really care. I always try to point out that's even more so while you care, right? Because who's making these decisions for you if you can't make them for yourself? Where are your assets going to go? Don't you want to be the one in control? So people often just think, oh, I need millions of dollars to worry about estate planning, but that's actually not true.
Yeah, that's so, yeah, I know. I hear that too. It's really interesting to me that people are, I think it's the word estate planning that kind of turns people off and scares them a little.
Right. I hear that.
I mean, a will, and then also with wills, I know that I've talked to young couples that with young children that don't have wills. And then one of the reasons is because they don't know who to leave in charge of their children.
My God. Yes, that's a huge thing. But I have to tell you, I'm actually probating 3 estates right now, 3, where a husband prematurely passed away in their 40s with minor children. And one has 5 children, one has 4 children, and one has 3 children, all under the age of 18. What a nightmare. 3 separate estates, I'm telling you. And it's just so crazy. And I don't know, I'm not going to go into why that's happening. I have no idea why that's happening. But to say, oh, I don't need an estate or a will, or we can't make a decision. I mean, look at what's happening now, picking up the pieces of not having it. And so I really pride myself and my partner as well in walking couples through making those decisions, because oftentimes the husband wants his side and the wife wants her side, or there's a lot of butting of heads. But the point is to make sure that they understand if there's no decision made, what the consequences are, right? Being on the other side of the no decision, it's better to butt heads up front and figure it out rather than leave a mess for children. I mean,
No,
I say
I
to my
agree
husband
with
all
that.
the time. I'm in the car with him. We're in the car together all the time. You go on a date night. You're going to a meeting at school, even for the kids. What if, God forbid, you're in a car accident? What if something happens to both of you? What's happening? Who's taking care of your kids in that moment? So it's really important to get over those humps and figure them out before there's an issue.
That's a great example. It's something I hadn't thought about saying. You're in the car together a lot. Anything can happen. That's interesting because I know that years ago, I don't know if people are still doing this. They travel separately. They're worried. They don't want something to happen. But it's so true that, and I think one of the things that I've thought about is like, just make a decision now on who the guardian should be. You can always change it in a year or so. I know it's costly to maybe do a new will and everything, but I think it's really important to have something in place until you can make that final decision for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And as long as you have capacity, this is a comfort to people who can't make up their minds on any of the decisions, right? As long as you have capacity, you can update your documents as many times as you want. You can sign it today, change it tomorrow if that's what you want to do. Just you have to have capacity. So, you're right.
That's
There's
so
always
true.
an out. There's always an out.
So, what are some mistakes that people make when they're planning their estate?
Well, this is actually a perfect segue. It's not having an estate plan, right? Not having your will. Honestly, the most important thing in my mind, advance directives. Not having advance directives is a huge mistake because people do not realize the consequences of not having one. And when you're in a situation where you don't have one and you need one, what that actually means. So, I could give you countless examples of people who didn't have powers of attorney that actually really needed them in the middle of a closing. If somebody became incapacitated, somebody had a stroke, they were selling one place, buying another place, and now all of a sudden there's no power of attorney. You're in the middle of two real estate deals in a hostile market. You can't not have the ability to move forward. Also, when you don't have an advance directive and you don't have a spouse and you don't have kids, what are the consequences of that? In a previous firm that I worked at, we worked for a guardianship company. We helped a guardianship company attain guardianship over people who didn't have family members, didn't have loved ones. What does that actually mean? Do I really want some entity taking care of me because I didn't name an agent under a power of attorney? So those whole not having an estate plan, so important. 18-year-olds not having a healthcare proxy power of attorney. They're off in college, something happens, and I call the healthcare center. I want to know what's going on with my child. God forbid my child's in a car accident. I want to know what's going on with my child. I'm sorry, Mrs. Birnbaum, I can't help you. Your child didn't name you as their agent under the healthcare proxy. So it's not just the will, it's the advance directives. It's a big misnomer to not have those things. Also, not understanding how your assets go when you're no longer here. So I don't know if you experience that with your clients, but a client will come in and say, I have 3 children. I want everything to go to my 3 children. And we're sitting there going through the accounts and, oh, that one has my oldest son as my joint owner because he handles my affairs. He pays my bills for me, or, he lives next door. So we just keep things together, not understanding that actually means that account is going to go to that son on your passing and not get divided amongst all the 3 kids. So I don't know if you experienced that, when you're going through your clients' affairs and understanding what each asset means and how an account is owned or titled or beneficiaries and things like that.
It's so true, Keren, because I think that people think that if they change their will, then that's really the bottom line and that's the most important thing. But it has nothing to do with their 401ks, their IRAs, or any other accounts that they have that have designated beneficiaries, because that overrides the will.
Exactly.
So they have to be reminded, you know what, if you're changing your will, you need to go in there and change those beneficiaries too. That's really important if you want that money to go to certain people. You need
to life insurance policies, or taking it in a different direction, but same concept is I sat with somebody, you sit with somebody, you create a trust, right? Assets don't telepathically get put into a trust. Just because you sit there and talk to somebody and say, oh, I created a trust, doesn't mean the trust automatically applies to those assets. You actually have to go and transfer the assets into the trust. So it's actually seeing how everything works together and putting all the pieces into the puzzle to make a full picture, and understanding how everything works together. So I've had clients come to me and say, we started on LegalZoom, or I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, or some.
No, I was just picking that up next.
Yeah. I started on a website, and then I realized I don't know what I'm doing. And kudos to you for realizing you don't know what you're doing, because on the flip side, I've had to probate those wills and things get messed up. But not understanding how each piece of the puzzle works together. It's so important to have your teammates so that doesn't happen. Your teammates being your accountant, your attorney, your financial advisor, things like that.
No, that's so important. I know that I do know some people that just did their wills on LegalZoom or other, websites like that. Similar. That's the only one I know the name of. But anyway, I've discouraged that because you really need a professional that's experienced, that knows the laws. You can't just go in there and fill out a form.
Yeah.
Maybe you could do that for a POA or, power of attorney if you wanted, because that's a simpler form if you really needed to, if that's the only thing you want to do.
I don't know, Judy. I don't know, because
how do
I know. I mean, yes, you can. I guess maybe it's better than nothing, so that if we needed to do a guardianship, we'd know who you wanted to act as your agent and power of attorney. The reason why no is because how many times have I reviewed a power of attorney where we need gifting powers or modifications that we make to the power of attorney in the modification section that are not included, because you don't know what you don't know. So you go online, you fill out a form, you fill in somebody's name, and it's good for nothing when we need to do certain transactions. So yes, it's good to have, better than nothing, I suppose, but not ideal in my opinion, unless you know what you're doing.
No, of course it's not ideal. I wasn't suggesting that, but I just said, in desperation, maybe it's the best thing, at least to have something in place where you really
understand that. Yeah.
So true. We're going to take a little break now, Karen, and then when we come back, we're going to talk some more.
Sure.
Hey there. I just want to tell you a little bit about my new book that just came out called Mastering Your Financial Life Cycles. And here it is. It's how to successfully manage your money in every decade of life. I co-authored this with my CFO, Liz Levy. And together we created this manual that's going to help you through every stage of life. We talk about having a baby. We talk about young adulthood, pre-retirement, what to do when you're at that age of retirement. If you're contemplating divorce, do you need an estate plan? We cover all of these, each subject in a different chapter. And I really think that you're going to find this so helpful, because at the end of every chapter, we have checklists that you can look at and you can use, and they can be a guide for you. So this is a wonderful manual that we've created. It's available on Amazon. You can also find it on our website at judithheft.com/book. And we're here for you. If you need anything, reach out. I hope you enjoy the book. Here's another picture of it, just so you know what's going on. Here it is. And I'm really proud of it. It's my second book. And I'd love to have you read it and give me your feedback. Judy Heft, judithheft.com, financial and lifestyle concierge, celebrating 26 years in business. And over the years, I've learned so much. And what I've been trying to do is impart a little bit of this knowledge to you, so I can help all of you become as financially organized as I am. Hello, and we're back. We're back with Keren Birnbaum. Keren is a trust and estates attorney, a partner at Birnbaum Lewis. And so when we were talking before, one of the things questions I was going to ask you, but you already said it anyway, but I thought we could elaborate on it a little bit, is when your kid goes to college or turns 18, having a will in place. Because I think there's so many people that don't really even know that you're supposed to do that. I know that when I sent my kids to college, which was a while ago, I was shocked that even though I was paying for it all, I couldn't call them and ask any questions about grades or anything like that. I was like, really? I'm the person that's paying this. This is ridiculous, but that's the way it is. And you kind of learn that the hard way a little bit. And I think also with having a will at 18, I think that's a good high school graduation gift you can give your child. And people don't realize how important it is.
They don't. And a lot of estate planning, you bring up a good point. A lot of estate planning, you don't realize there's an issue until there's an issue. So clients will come to me because there's a pain point. They realize, their neighbor had this experience where the son went to college and then they couldn't, ask a question with the person in college. So then they call me, oh, I have a kid in college. I don't want the same thing that happened to John Doe to happen to me. But it's real life. A real story is somebody was driving to college and got into a car accident, taken to the hospital. got a call that their son was in the hospital and tried to call the hospital saying, what's going on with my son, and didn't have any way to access information. God forbid, like something drastic could have happened. The son could have passed away and the mother wouldn't have known. She had to drive to the hospital, figure out everything was okay. But until you know, I mean, as a parent or as any kind of guardian or loved one, you don't want to be in that state of, oh my God, what is happening? And that state of unknown. So, or even just a power of attorney, paying rent, you live off campus, who is taking care of the bills? Does the kid really pay their own bills, or is the parent paying the bills for them? So you really don't realize there's an issue until there's an issue. And then what, so it is so important. It's a great idea. We always, every summer, put out a push so that parents become aware that these are things you need to address. You need to take care for your children because they don't know. You have to teach them.
Exactly.
The path. And I love, actually, a big thing that I love to do is education. So I love meeting with these college students or these 18-year-olds because they have no idea. It just opens their eyes. What do you mean? I have to let my parents sign this for, I have to appoint my father to make a healthcare decision for me? Or what if I don't want this parent, having access? And those are conversations that are very real. So like when we have a college student, we'll do a healthcare proxy, a living will, a power of attorney. Will also do a HIPAA authorization form. So if a child is in a hospital, and this actually happened to me while I was in college, I had to be taken to the hospital in an emergency. I went to school in Massachusetts. I had to come home for a surgery, and you needed a HIPAA authorization between the two. I had an 18-year-old last summer who signed the HIPAA authorization because it's part of the suite of documents. And he's like, wait a second, I don't want my parents having access to my medical records. Good for you. Good for you for understanding what we're actually signing here. So I think that's a huge, huge gift that you can give your child, that gift of education in the real life and how it plays out.
Absolutely. And so what did that person do that didn't want their parent to be their healthcare proxy?
So
someone else?
So the healthcare proxy was okay because the healthcare proxy allows somebody to make a healthcare decision if you couldn't for yourself. So he felt comfortable with that. In connection with the HIPAA authorization, allowing these people to make calling the doctor's office, tomorrow because a bill needed to be paid or transferring medical records, that's what he didn't want. So we just held on to the HIPAA authorization. We'll only allow the parents to have access to it if the time comes that they need to transact with it. So that was one way of, each situation is unique. And so we really do pride ourselves on taking care of each specific client and their own specific situation. So, in that case, we hold on to the original and the copies. Only the 18-year-old has the originals and only the copies. And we'll hand it out as necessary. Hopefully never to be necessary, quite honestly.
So Keren, do you suggest that everybody have a HIPAA authorization signed as part of their estate planning document?
I do. I do think it's an important document. I know every time you walk into a doctor's office, they'll ask you to sign a HIPAA authorization with them. Or if you walk into a hospital and you're going in for a procedure, they'll ask you if you have a healthcare proxy, and if you don't, they'll do one on site. The thing about the doing them on site for the specific doctor, for this specific procedure, is that it's unique to that specific circumstance. So that if you need it somewhere else, if I'm in New York and I sign a healthcare proxy with a New York hospital, but then I went to Massachusetts and they didn't have my New York healthcare proxy because that was with LIJ and I needed it with, I don't know, whatever hospital there, Mass General, then they don't have access. So the blanket healthcare proxy or blanket HIPAA authorization applies to me wherever I am.
So what do you do with that? So you keep that with your documents, and then if something happens, you get that out and you just...
Yeah. I mean, it's in my email. It's in my PDF in my phone. I have access to it at all times. If I need the original, I know where the original is. I call my attorney, or I know it's in XYZ drawer and whatever.
I don't think I have a HIPAA authorization. I mean, I find them when I've gone to the hospital or doctor's offices and things like that, but I didn't have that prepared with my estate plan document. So that's really interesting to me. That's good to know. Something I certainly had never thought of.
Now that is a form you can go online and fill out.
Okay.
That is not unique to me.
All right, that's great. That's good to know. Well, this was really interesting. So, is there anything else that we, forgot about, or any interesting stories that we want to tell?
Oh, for sure. I have stories from here till tomorrow, right? The only thing that I like to impart when I end a meeting with a client, or I end the transaction, and we sign your documents, we give you your package, you go on your way. It's not a one and done. It's not I do my will and I never think about it again. I like to tell the 5 Ds. I have a mnemonic, 5 Ds, that we revisit our estate planning. So I like I said, 5 Ds. We talk about a death. If somebody dies, obviously not if it's me, I'm not talking about it. But if somebody in my surroundings dies, divorce, somebody gets divorced, descendants, there's a new child, grandchild, niece, nephew, distance, somebody moves, or a disability, somebody becomes disabled. Now, these are not times that I have to update my documents. It's just a good trigger to review my documents. So it may be that I take out a document and I name somebody and then the executor died. So yes, I want to update my documents in that case, but it may not be anybody related to my specific documents. I just review them because something happened and I want to make sure they say what I want them to say. Mm-hmm. So things happen in my states. Assets may change. I may win the lottery and now I have an estate tax concern. I may lose all my money and now I thought I had a way to pay for long-term care needs, but actually I need to do Medicaid planning. So as I age, these are times that I want to take out my documents and revisit.
Oh, that's great. That's great information. I know when I got divorced, which was quite a few years ago, right before my divorce was final, we were still, we were separated and things weren't great. And I decided to take a trip. I was invited to visit someone. And so I thought, wow, I really need to update my will before I go on this trip. I don't want my ex-husband or soon to be ex-husband to get everything. Yes. I wanted to go directly to my children, who were adults at the time. They were in their 20s. And so when I went to my attorney at the time to do my will, he put in there's a paragraph that said, unbeknownst to me, Judy Heft is not leaving anything to, whatever.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
It's so important. And I'll tell you, well, he needed to put that in there because
we were married still.
You cannot disinherit a spouse. At least in New York State, you cannot disinherit a spouse. So that's why it's in there. So you typically in a situation where spouses or ex-spouses or soon to be ex-spouses get along, they'll sign a waiver saying we know, or it will be in the divorce agreement. But I actually had to, so in New York State, if you don't have a will, New York State writes a will for you. If you're married, it goes to your spouse. If you're married with children, it gets split. There's a formula. I had to, I'll say probate, but it's administered estate that did not have a will. A husband and wife separated in the late 90s. They went through a divorce proceeding in the 90s. It was never finalized, unbeknownst to the wife. She lived separate and apart for 20 years, died in 2021, was never officially divorced. We filed an administration proceeding, but again, nobody knew they weren't officially divorced other than this former spouse, who was, by the way, living with another woman as his wife, but officially never married, apparently, because he was never officially divorced. And he actually filed a claim against her estate to get money. He was entitled as a spouse, even though they lived separate and apart for 20-something years. He was living with another woman as his wife. He was still, under the law, entitled to her estate assets. So it was a second marriage situation. There were kids from a few marriages. It was not pretty. It is so important to review your estate planning documents. It is so important to be driving the boat and understanding what you're doing before your head is on fire, right? Before your sinking ship is like down under the water, because you don't realize there's a problem until there is a problem.
That's good. So it's important to be proactive and hire a professional always. Always hire a professional. That's our mantra today.
It is because you don't know what you don't know. And I'll say that all the time. If a client asks me a question I don't know, about corporate mergers, acquisitions, I don't know what I don't know. Let me reach out to somebody who does, right?
Exactly. That's perfect. So how can our listeners find you?
You could find me on my website, www.birnbaumlewis.com. I am also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Keren Birnbaum or Birnbaum Lewis, both cases.
That's great. Well, thank you, Keren. Thanks for being here as my guest today.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Always.
Thank you for tuning into Mastering Your Financial Life, hosted by Judy Heft. You can read chapters of her books and catch prior episodes of the show at www.judithheft.com. Thank you for your positive comments and sharing this show with others.